and a man.
Ben, did she deserve this award?
For what?
For courageously coming forward, for having been an athlete of great prowess and now fighting a new battle.
What exactly is the battle? I mean, self-definition is what you do, and my baby's doing it at 18 months old. I wasn't aware that you get a medal for it.
And being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do. Did she deserve the award?
65?
Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Bruce Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome, every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male. It turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
So you have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
Well,
what
no.
are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
Mr. Shapiro.
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly. What you do, and I've seen you do it on the program, is you keep saying to folks that if they disagree with you politically, then somehow this is a violation of what happened in Sandy Hook. And you have yet, I'd really like to hear your policy prescriptions for what we should do about guns. Because you say that you respect the Second Amendment, and, you know, I brought this here for you so that you can read it. It's the Constitution. And I would really like for you to explain to me what you would do about guns that would have prevented what happened in Sandy Hook. If you want to do what you did in the UK, right, which is ban virtually all guns, that is at least a fair argument. And we can have a discussion about whether that's something that we ought to do or not.
Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't... You know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high. Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened. MTV released a video of a bunch of people who you would never want to associate with in real life. Like people who, you just look at them and how smug and self-satisfied they are, and you think, I would not want to be within 100 miles of these folks. MTV released a video of resolutions for white guys for 2017. They're telling you what your resolutions should be, because there's nothing more ideologically fascistic than telling other people what they should aspire to be in the coming year. Here's MTV informing you. Remember when MTV used to put on music videos? Remember that? Yeah, not anymore. This is what it is now.
It's about to be a new year.
And there's a few things we think you could do a little bit better in 2017.
First off, try to recognize that America was never great for anyone who wasn't a white guy.
Can we all just agree that Black Lives Matter isn't the opposite of All Lives Matter?
Okay, so I love that the first gal gets up and says, can we agree America was never great for anyone who wasn't a white male? No, we can't agree on that at all. As a Jew, with ancestors who were Jews, I can pretty much agree America's the greatest country that God ever created. And by the way, for black people living in today's America, America's the greatest country that God ever created. And even during Jim Crow, America was a much better country for black people than the vast majority of countries around the world, which is not a case in favor of Jim Crow, God forbid. But to suggest that America was never great for anybody except white men is just a bunch of crap. I mean, how about white women, by the way? White women have had it better in America than any place else on earth. I mean, America is heaven for white women. I mean, white women now earn more than white men. White women are going to college at a higher rate than white men. even in the supposedly horrific, terrible, horrible, terrible 50s, women were actually pretty happy, if you look at the polls, of female satisfaction, because they were living in a prosperous country. And what a bunch of nonsense. And then this woman says, can we just agree that Black Lives Matter doesn't just mean Black Lives Matter? All Lives Matter is not a response to Black Lives Matter. No, because the entire Black Lives Matter movement is predicated on the notion that black lives are specifically under different assault than other lives in the United States by white people, and that is not true. And then I do love the fact that where they go next in this MTV video is they say, Black Lives Matter, you know, all lives matter is not a proper response to Black Lives Matter, because of course all lives matter, but we're just talking about black lives now. And then the next thing they say is that not all lives matter. Also, stop mansplaining to us. Stop mansplaining to us. Mansplaining is the stupidest word that anyone ever created, mansplaining. Okay, it's called an explanation. If a man is doing it and it is worthwhile, that does not mean that he's doing it as a man. Okay, men used to have a word for women-splaining. It was called nagging. Okay, this routine. But honestly, it's such silliness. I mean, continue it, because these people desperately. This is Donald Trump's re-election ad right here, and it's fun to watch. The truth is that Mother Teresa did less good for the world than Bill Gates, as a general matter. Because more people gained their jobs through Bill Gates, more people have a product that Bill Gates created, more people's lives have been bettered through Bill Gates. Mother Teresa did a lot of wonderful things. But the reality of the situation is that what makes your life better than people's lives were 50 years ago is all the new products and services developed by all the rich people who hire you. All of you out there who I'm sure are not rich, are you working for a poor person right now? Who is hiring you? Who's paying your salary? Unless you're working for the government, and even then you're not working for a poor person, you're paying for the rich people who actually pay the taxes that pay for you to work for the government. So this idea that economic growth is a function of people making $15 an hour versus $14 an hour is simply not true. The reality of the situation is that what makes the economy grow is new products and services that make your life better and which require millions of dollars in research and development. And as far as the point that was made about the salary of the CEO of Walmart, all I can say is this. Walmart has approximately, they're the biggest employer in the country. They have something on the order of 2 million employees across the country. Let's say we agree that 20 million is too much, and let's say that we cut that salary to zero. Great, we just gave everybody $10, right, for the year.
Well, I mean, I think number one, Trevor Noah is slightly below bubonic plague on the funny scale, so it's not really a shock that he'd come out with a tweet like that. But this shouldn't be a surprise. I think Trevor Noah kind of let loose what a lot of Democrats actually think, which is that there's no reason abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. The internal logic of that statement, the old Clinton formulation, doesn't hold. If abortion is about aborting something that isn't fully human, then why should it be rare? And if it is about aborting something that is human, then why exactly should it be legal? So the full-scale celebration that you see, the idea that abortion is actually birth control, that's what most Democrats believe, including the Democratic Party platform, which it was revealed today, calls for a destruction of literally all state and federal laws that restrict, quote, access to an abortion, as well as public funding for abortion both at home and abroad. They don't believe abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. They think that it's just a form of birth control.
You know that you weren't registered, whatever, for the group didn't register you for an event. They have strict things, so you're not allowed.
Well, I mean, YAF did inform you that I was coming as a speaker, as a person sitting in the audience, as well as a member of Christina Hoff Sommers' team. So I'm not sure whether their standards are necessary. I'm also wondering exactly why it's so necessary to keep me personally out.
We're just following protocol, sir.
Well, why is your protocol to keep me specifically out?
What country protocol? Soviet Union or United States?
Do you want to step over here to decide?
Well, I'm happy to do it right here if you'd like. I mean,
doesn't have to
it needs to be
step
private.
The bottom line is it's private property, okay? That it wasn't proper procedures weren't followed, and you're not going to be allowed.
So am I to understand that if I take 3 steps forward, you will attempt to have me arrested?
If you create a problem and you will not, leave the campus, yes.
Okay, so just to be clear, if I attempt to enter that hall right there and sit down just to listen to somebody speak, or if I attempt to ask a question or to engage in free speech, you will have me arrested.
At this point, yes, sir.
Okay, I'm glad that we've clarified that situation. I'm also glad that in a city, I mean, clearly you have great security. I'm glad in a city that has some 4,000 shootings to this date, you have 30 members of security just for a 5'9", 165 Jewish guy. The truth about healthcare is this. There are 3 qualities of healthcare that you can have. You can have affordability, you can have universality, or you can have quality. And you can have 2 of those 3 things, but not all 3. Right? You can have universality, affordability, or quality. 2 of those 3 things you can have. Reimburse people for their bad health. If you join up with an insurance company and your health sucks to begin with, you're going to pay more because it's an insurance company, not a charity. And that doesn't mean that we can't have... But what we can't do is suggest as the Bernie Sanders left does, that health care is an inalienable right, and therefore you can put a gun to my wife's head, she's a doctor, and you can force her to provide care at any cost you want to pay. You can't do that and hope to increase the supply of health care. Health insurance is not health care. They're not the same thing. And anybody who tells you differently is lying or trying to sell you something. The problem with Medicare for all is that when people say that it's affordable, this isn't affordable to the person who has the Medicare. It is not affordable to the country. In fact, it is so unaffordable to the country that the state of California was a nut job leftist state, just refused to even pass Medicare for all because it would have immediately doubled the debt.
That all depends on whether the press decides that they hate Hillary. If they decide that they hate Hillary and they can find the bright new young thing, then they'll throw Hillary over in a New York Minute. Unless they decided that they really love Bill so much that they want Hillary. They can't stand, the press can't stand Hillary. I mean, nobody on the left can really stand Hillary. They love Bill, but they can't stand Hillary. Basically, the press's relationship with Hillary is Bill's relationship with Hillary. Right? They're in a forced marriage, and they don't really like her very much, and they will cheat at the first available opportunity. But, yeah, but they have to be there because, hey, and then it becomes, okay, so how do we define life? And the answer to me is you define life by the same way that you would define life if you found it on Mars, right? If you found a single-celled organism on Mars, it's a life, right? I know, as somebody who has one baby and another on the way, you know, that what's in there is not a random piece of tissue. At the very least, even if you don't believe it's a life yet, it's certainly a potential human life, and that seems to be more valuable than your convenience. And there's something nasty and cruel and degrading about the idea that you get to decide whether something is a life or not based on whether it's convenient to you or because it's in your body. By the way, this is exactly, it truly is amazing actually how history repeats itself. The argument in favor of abortion is exactly the same as the argument in favor of slavery. Exactly the same, right? You're on my land, I get to decide. It's up to me to decide whether you're a person or property. It's up to me, right? What are you going to say? It's on my land, what are you going to do? If you got rid of all those things, if you got rid of government involvement, Bernie Sanders would still think that something was wrong if Bill Gates is earning a lot of money and somebody at the bottom is earning none. Yeah. He sees somebody in a room with $5 and somebody with $1, and he immediately says the guy with $5 must have stolen something from the guy with $1. Whereas I say I have no evidence of that until you show me that evidence. Maybe the guy with $5 produced more than the guy with $1.
In your video where you debunk white privilege, you talk about how white privilege is a made-up term by privileged minorities. So I was wondering if you can elaborate on some of the privileges that you think minority groups have.
Okay, so in privileges in law, so when I say privilege, I'm actually going to talk about legal standing. Okay, so affirmative action is a privilege. Affirmative action is a privilege. Subprime mortgages designed to appeal to minority recipients without proper qualifications, that is a privilege. Now, those are a couple examples of privilege. Privilege would also be the police being told that they can't police in communities the same way they would in other communities because they don't understand the problems of minority communities. That's a privilege. And by the way, these privileges are not helpful, but these are, as an overall matter, but it is certainly it's very difficult for me to see how it's not a privilege to get a lower score on the SAT than the Asian guy who's living in exactly the same circumstance. He gets penalized 50 points, you get 230 points on the SATs. That is definitionally a privilege. So there's one. Do you disagree?
Yeah, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, so I'm just going to let.
I mean, this is the hilarious thing about the Occupy idiots. They're out there making a big fuss, and they're saying we want jobs commensurate with our education. Right now, they have jobs commensurate with their education. It's called sitting out on the street doing nothing with your life because you're a bunch of liberal arts morons. You got a degree in queer dance theory, and now you expect a $100,000 job somewhere. Sorry, ain't gonna happen.
They're a better workforce to complete on a global scale.
Redistribution of wealth does not achieve competition because it turns out that what actually achieves competition is the sort of values that you impose in your work life. This is why if you have a bunch of people who win the lottery, disproportionately people who are poor and win the lottery end up poor again. The reason people are permanently poor in the United States is not because they don't have money, it's because they suck with money. The reason people are temporarily poor is because they don't have money. The reason they're permanently poor, okay, this is self-evident, folks, that's not even controversial. If you're poor in America your entire life, you are not great with money by definition. So, okay, let's assume that your scientific knowledge is vast. Let's assume your scientific knowledge. So are you also against partial birth abortion?
I think it's, I don't understand why people would have a,
At what point does that bundle of cells become a human being in your view?
Sorry.
No, really, I mean, this is...
No, I just need to calm down for a
second. Sorry, did I trigger you?
You want to go to another...
In conversations with him, and you shut him down too.
In what way have I shut you down? You've been talking for like 10 minutes here.
He's been talking, I've been talking, but you haven't actually answered a question.
No, I did. You just don't like the answer. I'm sorry if you don't like the answer. What's up? You're not changing anybody's mind. All you're showing everybody is that your collective IQ, if it were channeled into electricity, might be able to toast a piece of bread lightly.
How do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay. Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
It's biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society.
Okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay. You're not a man if you think you're a man. And I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
You said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true. Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should not be accepted because they don't really fit into either place? They can't just
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Where's that written though? Okay.
In the name Boy Scouts. Because this is a very because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl. And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's right. Men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
It's a completely different thing. You can't just say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. Okay, I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably young and naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60? Why aren't you 60?
Because
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you identifying as 60?
Because it's not the same as gender. You can't just.
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender. You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
You can still legally change it. People recognize.
You can't legally change your age, by the way.
Hello, my name is Constantino, and I just graduated high school a week ago, and I'm going to attend Emory University in the fall. And in our English class, we were shown an extremely feminist video displaying the Fox News as one of the main news sources that displays, I guess, anti-feminist views.
Right, because all the women are attractive.
Yeah, exactly, pretty much. So what are your thoughts on, I guess, feminism in general and everything?
Well, I mean, feminism, the original point of feminism was a good point, which was a lot of men acted like pigs, right? I mean, that's true. The problem is the solution of feminism was, okay, let's have women act like pigs also, as opposed to let's hold men to a higher standard, which is really what should have happened. They destroyed the very institutions that benefit women the most. You know who's benefited from feminism the most is men. Men have benefited enormously. We have to work less. You know, listen, if I can get my wife is in medical school at UCLA, I promise you, I'm going to take a sabbatical the minute she starts working. You know, feminism, women in the workplace is a wonderful thing. My mom was a working woman. My dad was actually home with the kids. Feminism was very good about getting women into the workplace. What feminism was very bad about was the idea you have to destroy all traditional values in order to get women into the workplace. That's a lie. It's not true at all. The greatest institution in the history of mankind for women is monogamous marriage. It is the greatest institution in the history of mankind. Before that, women were just they were members of harems, and they were victims of sexism on a routine basis. Marriage, anybody who's married, you guys aren't married yet, marriage is about equality. That's what a marriage is about. It's not about, the feminists have this idea of marriage that it's a patriarchal institution in which the man bosses the wife around. If that's the case, my wife certainly hasn't heard about it. So, feminism has made a lot of mistakes, among them the idea that of separating marriage from sexuality, the idea that women should act exactly like men, that men and women are exactly the same. That's unnecessary. Men and women can have equal rights without being exactly the same. But the Sex and the City version of femininity is really quite repulsive and has led many young women to damage their lives because they buy into the idea that they can have sex with as many people as promiscuous men would, and it will have no impact on them. Men and women are very different. They treat sex very differently. I mean, for men, there's only one question. Well, there are two questions: when and where, right? And women generally like to ask the question who. Well, Sex and the City says that women should not even bother asking the question who. They should just treat it like men treat it. And that's devastating because men and women are not built the same. They don't treat sex the same. They don't treat relationships the same. Women civilize men. That's what women do. It's one of the things women do. And men are supposed to provide for women. That doesn't mean that women can't provide also. They should provide also. It's great. I've insisted to my wife. I promise you, right now she's studying for boards, and every other day I'm hearing about how she wants to quit med school. And I tell her, God forbid something should happen to me. I want to make sure that you can provide for yourself. I think it's very important that women get an education and be able to are independent. I think women's independence is a phenomenal thing. That was the good news about feminism. The bad news about feminism is that they felt they had to destroy the superstructure on which all of Western civilization is built in order to get women into the workplace.
So the first thing that I hate today is this insane piece by some crazy person named Jodi Allard. She's apparently a feminist blogger. First of all feminist bloggers are, I don't mean to generalize, but they're all crazy. So she actually has a piece today called, the title of it is, "I'm done pretending men are safe, even my sons." Really. And the entire thing is about how her sons are potential rapists. She says, "I have 2 sons. They're strong and compassionate, the kind of boys other parents are glad to meet when their daughters bring them home for dinner. They are good boys in the ways good boys are, but they are not safe boys. I'm starting to believe there's no such thing." She is talking about her own children being potential rapists because of rape culture. She said, "I wrote an essay in the Washington Post last year during the height of the Brock Turner case about my sons and rape culture. I didn't think it would be controversial when I wrote it. I was sure most parents grappled with raising sons in the midst of rape culture." Well, no, actually. It turns out that the vast majority of us who grow up as boys in households that have good parents, we're not part of a rape culture because we are taught at a very early age that you're not supposed to rape people, right? That rape is a bad thing. I thought this was a pretty clear rule of Western civilization for the past 1,000 years or so. Because I didn't think it would be controversial when I wrote it. The struggle I wrote about was universal, I thought, but I was wrong. My essay went semi-viral, and for the first time, my sons encountered my words about them on their friends' phones, their teachers' computers, and even overheard them discussed by strangers on a crowded metro bus. Right, because when you say your sons are potential rapists, that might have some bad ramifications. They're your kids, you stupid idiot. And then she says it was one thing to agree to be written about in relative obscurity, and quite another to have my words intrude on their daily lives. By the way, this is the same lady who wrote a column about how one of her sons was apparently suicidal, with a mother like this. And she says, one of my sons is suicidal, so we sat down and watched 13 Reasons Why. Are you the stupidest person on planet Earth? Okay, have you ever seen 13 Reasons Why? Like half the show is dedicated to why suicide is a choice that is driven by outside forces. It's not really in your hands. Anyways, she says, one of my sons was hurt by my words, although he's never told me so. He doesn't understand why I lumped him and his brother together in my essay. He sees himself as the good one, the one who is sensitive and thoughtful and who listens instead of reacts. He doesn't understand that even quiet misogyny is misogyny, and not all sexists sound like Twitter trolls. So he seems like a nice kid, but she's calling him a sexist and a rapist. He's angry at me now, although he won't admit that either, and his anger led him to conservative websites and YouTube channels. Okay, if the son of Jodi Allard is watching this right now, please write me an email. I would be happy to have you intern with us here over at the Daily Wire. I think that you deserve better than what your mother has provided to you, a label as a potential rapist. I don't think you're a rapist. I don't think you're a potential rapist. You seem like a nice person. Your mother, however, seems like she is a harridan. She says, I teeter frequently between supporting my son and educating him. Is it my job as his mother to ensure he feels safe emotionally, no matter what violence he spews? Can she give an example of like the violence that her son is spewing? Is he coming home and going, rape, 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 rape? Like what exactly is he doing? Is he coming home and he's just saying, I saw a girl on the bus today. You know what I thought? I thought rape. I'm pretty sure that's not what happened. But when you're a crazy person, then this is what happened. And then she starts talking about her dating life. Okay, why do feminists always feel the need to talk about their dating life like anybody cares? She says, I joined Bumble recently after a 6+ year break from dating. I'm not overly interested in dating in the first place, but I'm starved for adult conversation, so dating feels like a necessary evil. Well, no, there's some of us who have friends. I mean, you could do that.
It's just Bumble, as I explained to my married friends, is like feminist Tinder. Women have to initiate contact with men, so there's no inbox full of bleep pics every day. But feminists are not. The men are no different from the men anywhere else, and I quickly felt deflated. All men are... Okay, I have a general recommendation. If you believe that all men or all women are crazy, that everybody's terrible, maybe it's just you. Maybe it's just you. If every relationship you've ever had has gone bad, maybe it's not because all the people you know are terrible. Maybe you suck as a human. Okay, and I'm going to go with that on this one. It's just... My sons won't rape unconscious women behind a dumpster, and neither will most of the progressive men I know. But what all of these men share in common, even my sons, is a relentless questioning and disbelief of the female experience. I didn't realize the common female experience was to be raped while unconscious behind a dumpster. I know a few females, and I don't know any of them who've been raped while unconscious behind a dumpster, or at least none who have told me about it. And if they did tell me about that, I would say, can we find the person and hunt them down? Like, that would be my first reaction. Can we tell the police? And if not, is there a way that we can kill this person and get away with it? Like, that seems like the best possible, like, is that not feminist enough? Do I have to do more than that? So I do not want to prove my pain or provide enough evidence to convince anyone that my trauma is merited. Okay, if you accuse someone of rape, you might have to provide evidence of actual rape. Like, you shouldn't just be able to accuse anyone of any crime. Totally insane. Totally insane. Child Protective Services needs to show up, like, right now at this lady's door. Thank God, it sounds like her sons are getting old enough that they get to leave home. Leave now. Leave now, okay? I will try to find a way to put you up in your own apartment. Seriously. Okay? You deserve to get out of there right now, Jody Allard's children. My God.
A disease. This is not my opinion. This is facts from the World Health Organization and the American Psychologists Association. Just like gay people don't have a disease. Fact number 2. Rich kids stay rich, poor kids stay poor. Out of 1,800 billionaires in the world, 12 of them are black. Where you come from, where you grow up, how much your parents earn, whether your parents were married plays a major role in determining where you
is there a question mark at the end?
Fact number 3. I would just like to remind you that hate speech is not free speech.
Yes, it is.
And my question is, since facts don't care about your feelings, why did you use false facts?
Okay, so none of the facts that I used are false. First of all, yes. No, okay, first of all, would you like the answer? Okay, so the 3 facts you mentioned, you talked about transgenderism. First of all, until 5 minutes ago, the DSM specifically defined transgenderism as a disorder. It defined it as gender identity disorder, now calls it gender dysmorphia, which doesn't even make sense. It says that depression is the actual problem, not the actual gender disorder, which again does not explain why the transgender suicide rate is upward of 40%, and the actual suicide rate for the rest of the American population is lower than 3%. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, you talked about income inequality, and you suggested that all wealth is inherited. This is nonsense. According to the IRS statistics, if you are born into the bottom 20% of wage earners in the United States, you will not be one of the bottom 20% of wage earners in the United States. 90% of people will not be within 15 years. There's tremendous wage mobility in the United States of America. Plus, there is not a group of people who just sit at the very top and stay there. People move up and down, in and out of the 1%. 1% just defines the line of income. It doesn't define the people who are in that 1% of income. I've been in the 1%. I've been out of the 1%. It will happen to lots of people. People who are older tend to be more likely to be in the 1%. They weren't once in the 1%. What happened? Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, you say hate speech is not free speech. It depends how you define hate speech. The only speech that is not free speech is speech that overtly defends or pushes violence. Specifically, speech that is generating violence, right? That's the only type of speech that's not hate speech. If I say things you don't like, that's not hate speech. And if you think that it is hate speech, you're a fascist. End of story.
Knows anything about politics, they know you're evil.